Fuck Neil Strauss. Welcome back to The War on the Game, Part 2. I'd like to give a special shout out to all my game warriors out there, all the people who have written in stories about Neil in the last week, all the people that have left comments talking about how Neil's the worst, and to my haters who left comments talking about how I suck. Thank you. Keep promoting me. I appreciate it. Please leave a comment on this video. It bumps my SEO and my traffic anyway, so tell me to get cancer, tell me I suck, whatever. Just bump my SEO and make sure you spell my name right. Jonsin. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a specific incident that happened when I first knew Neil Strauss was a horrible, horrible, horrible human being. And it's kind of a funny story. Looking back on it now, at the time it wasn't a funny story, but looking back on it now, I definitely see the humor in this whole tale I'm about to tell you. So, take a trip back in time with me here. Hop in the DeLorean or whatever other time machine we have, and go back to the year 2005. The place is a horrible goth club called The World. The day is a Sunday night, which was the World's night 6 years ago when this situation happened. Awful, awful, awful club. 18 and over, gothic, ugly, fat chicks running around, but the occasional hot girl. Mystery on a Mystery Method boot camp. This was back when the boot camps were 3 days instead of 2. And you would see like 6 of the students out of every 12 wouldn't come out on the Sunday night. So eventually, after following my lead, most companies cut down to 2 nights of infield. It's because most Sundays suck in most cities. Anyway, Mystery is shockingly, I know that this is going to come as a surprise for some of you, but Mystery was trying to steal a girl I made out with. Despite me telling him to leave her alone, despite Savoy telling her to leave her alone, despite us being on a boot camp, he was basically ignoring students to game my girl, which is a pretty Eric thing to do. This story isn't even really about Eric, though. It's cool. Eric steals chicks. He has built-in obsolescence into his friendship because the only reason to hang out with him is to get better game because he's not a fun person to be around. And once you get good with girls, he'll try to steal them. So if you're like a normal person and not like a sycophant or someone who's using him to make money, Eric builds obsolescence into his friendship. And this was the point where we hit that. So Mystery's making out with this girl and telling me lies about how they met each other 7 years ago. And he's going to send me pictures, which to this date, as of April 11th, 2011, I still have not gotten those pictures from 7 years ago, which I guess now would be like 13 years ago. So Eric, sinstravel@gmail.com, you can still send me the pictures. Or you can admit that you were just lying. Either or. I'm cool with whatever. Enter Neil. So I'm like 20 years old at this point. Like I'm still a junior instructor. I think I'd probably been helping. This is probably like the 20th boot camp I'd helped on. And I'm like, I can't keep hanging out with this girl because Savoy tells me to go work with students because I actually am good at working with students as opposed to other instructors who stand there gaming their supposed friends' girls. Savoy suggests that I try to get Neil to talk to Eric as, they're supposedly best friends, even though, in my opinion, neither one of them has friends as much as they have people they're aligned with. So I go up to Neil and I'm like, hey man, and I'm probably losing my mind at this point. I mean, again, 20 years old, I idolize Eric. I just spent the last 6 weeks staying with him in Vegas, teaching boot camps and like hanging out, and I felt like we were friends. Whether or not that's my own fault for just getting gamed is a debatable point, but at the time I thought we were friends and I felt like he was doing something really shady. Now I realize that Eric doesn't have friends, so it's okay, but 26 is different from 20. So I go up to Neil and I'm like, man, Eric's stealing my girl, and he's like, yeah man, that sucks. He does that all the time. I'll talk to him. I'll fix this. I don't know why that was like the TD voice. They're basically the same voice, either way. So what does Neil do? Does he talk to Eric and explain that since I was sort of living with him for the last 6 weeks, it's a bad idea to steal the girl, bros before hoes, any of that? Does he talk about how it's bad to start a feud with the youngest and most talented instructor at his company, the guy who in less than a month would actually take over as the lead instructor for Mystery Method? When I turned 21 in 2005, I became the lead instructor and Mystery retired, less than a month after this happened. So, not a good idea, and probably some of the seeds of the political feuds that would grow into destroying the Mystery Method company were probably sowed on this day. Does he even just explain it's not cool? Does he even just go, man, like, that's, like, not a cool thing to do? Like, you shouldn't do that. No, no, and no. Instead, in true scumbag fashion, he tries to go for a makeout with the girl himself. He gets introduced to her by Eric and then proceeds to try the evolution phase shift, which fails epically. And I watched this happen from 5 feet away because I used it on her 3 hours before. She's like, oh, he did that on me earlier. So Neil shuffles away with his tail between his legs, and when I understandably call him out on it, I'm like, what the hell was that? Why were you trying to make out with her? He tries to justify his selfish and shitty behavior by saying, and I quote, 6 years later, you can put me on a polygraph test. This quote was burned into my brain because it solidifies everything about Neil Strauss, what he tries to pretend to be and what he actually is. And he said, and I quote, I was just trying to teach you guys a lesson, but she was a whore and didn't like either of you. Number one, who calls random women whores? Number two, who the fuck asked you to teach us a lesson? Nobody came here and was like, hey, teach me that girls don't really like me in clubs. And number three, that lesson could be taught without you trying to get laid and get a makeout as well. You're getting personal gain out of this lesson, which kind of kills your credibility when it comes to the idea that you're trying to teach us something, as opposed to just get your dick wet. And that was when I knew. That was the moment I knew. I said to myself outside when I was yelling at Eric before I got in the car with Savoy and drove 2 hours at 2 in the morning to San Diego because I couldn't stand to be near Eric or Neil. Should have punched Eric in the face. My great regret in life is that at that moment I didn't punch Eric because I should have. But at that moment I knew that my days of looking up to Neil Strauss or thinking that he was like some sort of cool together guy who like had anything to teach me about inner game or being like a good person or, you know, being good with girls were done. I knew at that moment that this guy is the shittiest kind of person, the person who always tries to put himself first and always thinks about what he can get out of every situation. And now it's my mission to help the world see it too. My mission now is to bring you these videos every week until the SEO for Neil just says Neil's a scumbag. Till you Google Neil Strauss and you don't get that he's a best-selling author or that, you know, whatever his like bullshit PR spin that he puts on things are, but you get the truth. You get the truth. You get stories like this, things that have happened that Neil Strauss does that he wants nobody to know about. And that's what I'm going to keep bringing you in this war. We're not going anywhere. I stopped posting last week because the comment section was blowing up, and I was amused. And why post when you guys will keep commenting for me? So these are coming every week. I just talked to a former Style Life instructor for a couple hours last week. Got a whole bunch of news stories, stuff that I hadn't even heard of before, and we're not going to stop. We're coming and coming and coming hard, and that's what's going to happen. It's going to be a bad year, Neil. Get used to it. Talk to you guys soon. War Neil Strauss. War, fuck the game.